Hi, guys, and welcome. Welcome, Narda. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. So for those of you who are joining us live, it's really great to have you. We are going to be speaking about the use of cannabis in veterinary rehabilitation and a little bit in veterinary medicine in general, which is quite an exciting topic. There's so much that we should know, need to know, don't know yet. So I'm really excited to chat about that with Dr. Narda and with you guys. The reason we are on Facebook, just so that I remind you all, is so that we can have a conversation. So please join us. Please ask questions, comment, share your ideas and experiences. We're here to chat with you guys. So chat with us, engage with us, join the conversation. That's what it's all about. If you're watching us as a recording, great, welcome. It's awesome to have you. Comment and engage with us anyway, even though we're no longer here. We'll come back and chat to you once we see those comments in a day or so. So without any further ado, Narda, welcome. It's really great to have you here. Please introduce yourself and your interest in cannabis.
Yeah, well, thanks for the invitation. I am a veterinarian and an osteopathic physician. So in the States, equal license and training as MDs, but also we learn a lot about ways to optimize the endogenous healing qualities that we have. And now that I became a veterinarian 20-something years ago, we see that in animals too. And so I taught at Colorado State University here in Colorado for 20 years. And now I run my own school called CuraCore Vet and also CuraCore Med for human instruction. So my main focus is just teaching and advocating for scientific approaches to integrative medicine and rehabilitation. And so when I was at Colorado State, I left in about 2016, around 2015 or so, we just saw this fast burgeoning interest in cannabis in Colorado. And so the president of the university was getting a lot of requests from people in Denver, in Loveland, just surrounding communities that were growing. They had these grow operations wherever they were, and they wanted to give the university money for investigating the scientific mechanisms and the treatment value of cannabis for dogs. And so so they approached me because I was the integrative medicine person. And I was like, yeah, I'll help you with that. And so this is where the surreality, the surrealness of this experience and journey started, is that we went down to one of these potential funders into Denver, which is a major city in Colorado, and into this old warehouse that had been refashioned into a grow operation with multiple floors, all growing cannabis plants from the little sproutlet to harvesting and drying and preparing. And I was with like one of the top financial people that determined, where funding went, like in the university. So that was surreal that here I was with them, and we went into this marijuana grow facility that you'd never know from the outside because it just looked like an old warehouse, but it had elevators. I mean, and it was filled with people that had obviously been in the cannabis field for a long, well, they were probably, in their late teens and early 20s. So for their relatively, to be, shorter lives, you could tell that they were experienced with growing this stuff. And so, and when we walked in, I was really kind of appalled a little bit, or just turned off by this wave of volatile oils from the cannabis. It's like, I don't know, this smells like a combination of skunk and cat urine, and I don't like it at all. But we went there, we had the whole tour, and I mean, by the time we left, I was like, that's not so bad. And when we went outside, it's like, you know what, I wouldn't mind going back in because I'm sure that those volatile oils were having an effect because they just seep, they can do transdermal, olfactory, all this stuff. But it was so awakening because while it was a beautiful thing to see the amount of care that these small little plants were getting throughout their growth cycle, we'd go into each room where, you'd have these little croppy areas, just boxes of cannabis, and they ultimately grew really tall. It was wonderful, except then by the end, our tour guide got a wand, like a spray wand that was attached to this like 50-gallon metal drum with no writing on the outside. And he told us how you can kill off any little bugs or, there's mold that can grow, there's bacteria, but little bugs that can impair the quality of the plant. And so you use things that kill those bugs or kill the mold or whatever. And he was showing how you spray it on like the undersides of the leaves so carefully because they were all so careful. And you wouldn't want this, very expensive plant to be destroyed. But I was like, well, what is that? And so, and then we saw the end, we saw the whole thing like to the end, and they're cutting up the little plants and processing them. But as I got into thinking about what are we going to research with dogs, I thought about those unknown pesticides and, just some of the research, like for the people that would smoke this, I know this is off topic, but if you smoke that and it has who knows what on it, that is a really great way to deliver whatever those chemicals were into your bloodstream. And of course, some of our animals could be exposed to that kind of smoke too, but it just raised awareness for me of the fact that there is no serious regulation about growing. I mean, there's like don't or okay, but we need so much more protection for the public on the quality of products, whether they're human or veterinary, and appropriate testing. So of the quality and disclosure, transparency. So when we started to work from the university and just we had people from all over because they're interested in the textile aspects of hemp, the chemistry, metabolomics lab, all these things. So from all different disciplines. But so where do you go from there? And so for the canine clinical research, then we had the question, do you do edibles like we have in medical marijuana and even recreational? And what are the issues with that? Do you do an extract? Do you focus on one cannabinoid? So like CBD, cannabidiol, which, many people will be familiar with, or do you go for the spectrum that some people talk about, the entourage effect of having a lot of different cannabinoids, so cannabis type chemicals like CBD. You wouldn't want too much THC by any means, except some people are experimenting now with that with animals, but just all the different, like hundreds of different products that are in the plant, including what are essentially essential oils, but terpenes, terpenoids, flavonoids, sterols. So plants are complex beings, and it's not like a drug where you have one active ingredient and then some filler. And so that's the next step. How do we research in terms of what do we give them? What's the chemical makeup? How do we make that consistent? How do we make a placebo control? If you can smell these terpenes, then it needs to somehow be disguised if you're going to have the non-active one. So many things. If we're going to do edibles, how well do those chemicals in the plant stand up to the baking process? What is the shelf life? Then what is the bioavailability? So what we're seeing now are certain companies coming forth and supporting research, typically within academic institutions, that use their product. And so we get more data. We get pharmacokinetic data, so we know how well their product is absorbed into a dog or a cat, and there's some horse studies. So what's the rate of absorption? Is it, in 1 or 2 hours that you start to see it in their bloodstream? What is the most bioavailable so that you can get enough uptake to make a clinical difference? what are the contraindications and adverse effects? How does it affect the blood profile? So we're a lot further in a relatively short amount of time than we were when CSU was bold enough to take those first steps when the Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, or administration, the DEA, was and still is very vague as far as what you can do. I mean, so good for CSU for making those advancements and for still continuing to be leaders in that. But we have so much further to go, but we already know quite a bit. So hope that wasn't too long.
Yeah, that's quite. I mean, that is quite surreal. That experience. I'm just trying to imagine that being me, and it would have been interesting. That's for sure. Yeah. Okay, so I just want to welcome everyone that's joined us live while you were chatting. Guys, we're chatting about cannabis oil to use in veterinary medicine or rehabilitation. So we would love to have any questions from you, any comments, experiences. Join the discussion and chat with us. That's what it's about and why we're here today. So let's chat a little bit about the science and what we know cannabis or cannabinoids to be able to do for our patients. And so which applications would we use them for, because they're achieving what exactly? Can you take us a little bit through that? I think that question was very broad, but yeah.
Yeah, well, the actions are as broad. So, I mean, physicians and veterinarians or people treating animals have used cannabis historically for ages. I mean, centuries. It goes back to ancient Greece and Asia as well. I have old medicinal bottles that on a label, talk about cannabis and opium and different things. I think even Park Davis used to make cannabis. So that's an old drug company that has been, reabsorbed by other corporations. But so the range of applications in the old days is somewhat similar to now, but the studies that we're seeing focus on pain, let's say from osteoarthritis or even cancer. So joint pain, anxiety. Some people use it for thunderstorm anxiety or phobia, and appetite regulation. And that harkens back to the old days too, where even they would give horses mixtures of cannabis, leaf or seeds to help treat them for colic. So yeah, there's a very diverse array of applications, and we see that because of the complexity of the cannabis chemistry, that if you have certain types of strains, or people say chemovars, of the plant, that they might be better in regulating a certain disease than others. And so that gets back to what is in, let's keep it in the hemp line of things, what is in a hemp derived product that is predominantly cannabidiol. Well, so you might have cannabidiol, which works by interfacing with the nervous system and the immune system. And one of the biggest values of the cannabis research that has flourished over even 50 or 60 years, but has been inhibited, at least in the US, by our government, but even more we know about it now, is discovery of the endocannabinoid system, also called the ECS, which is just an auto-regulatory system to keep nervous system firing patterns in balance. And so rather than be like a drug where, we're going to inhibit like the cyclooxygenase enzyme, or we're going to have anti-nerve growth factor. We're going to target something and kind of demolish it or inhibit it in a big way. The beauty of the cannabis chemistry as a molecule or set of molecules that can help us is that it can serve to support the endogenous or internal regulatory system that we have. Now, yeah, if you use too much of certain chemicals, especially THC, then you can throw it way out of whack. But when we're using things clinically and therapeutically, there's a wide safety margin. And so with CBD, as opposed to THC, CBD is not hallucinatory, intoxicating, whatever. And so that's the biggest thing for people to know. Even though the cannabis plant can produce what we call in the US marijuana, or, you know, a hemp derived product, that spectrum is defined by the amount of the THC in it. So when people get high of a joint or this or that, then they're looking for that THC, you know, effect. And there can even be medicinal value in that, but we're not using that right now. We're not advocating for that in veterinary medicine for the most part. At least at this stage. If we did, we'd use very, very small molecules. But and so the fact that cannabidiol, as the main component of many of these mixtures, can work to regulate immune function and decrease inflammation, and it has interactions with a whole array of neurotransmitter systems, serotonergic, glycine, and various others, adenosine. And so it is helping to reduce usually the over vigorous firing that our nervous system does in cases of long-term stress, pain, environmental, you know, challenges, and all that. So what we can do with that, and I see we do have a comment here, but, and I'll get to that, but so the applications that have been studied are, as I say, osteoarthritis is a big one. So and stress, and you know, just things like that, appetite stimulation. I already went through those, but and another big one is seizure control. We're still in the very early stages, especially for seizure control. A lot of people use it for that, but we need more evidence.
Okay. Wow, very, very interesting and very applicable to us. All of those things are applicable to us. So Heather, I'm so glad you've joined us. It's really great to have you. Heather says she's been using CBD in her practice since 2014. And last year, the SAVC, which is our South African Veterinary Council, has approved a course for 25 CPD points. If anybody in SA would like to find out more, they're welcome to contact me. Thank you, Heather. That's really awesome. I didn't know that, actually. I would love to know more about your course. Please let me know more about your course. The course. That's amazing. I didn't know that the SAVC had approved a course for 25 CPD points. That's good news, because it means they're getting behind the use of CPD in veterinary medicine. So let's talk a little bit about the different kinds of products we can get. And you've mentioned the different ways we could be giving it to our patients. I mean, we see everything from treats with CBD in it to oils to all kinds of different products. So please talk to us a little bit about the different products we could find and what we should and shouldn't be using.
Yeah, well, the different types of delivery mechanisms can be like an oil extract kind of thing. So predominantly like a hemp oil base, but it has to have a certain therapeutic amount of CBD or what other constituents. One of the arguments for giving a product that has a certificate of analysis, so that's a breakdown of all the different components that is hopefully not fake, and is relevant to the batch that you have. So that's another just sort of thorny issue. But if it's legit and has the whole spectrum of cannabinoids, so let's say CBD, and then the acid precursor for that, CBDA, which a lot of people like for anti-inflammatory approaches, and then CBG, cannabigerol, which is sort of the precursor molecule for most of the other cannabinoids in the plant. So you can look for a product that has what you want in it that addresses the problem that you're treating. So if you have muscle pain and inflammation, you might want something that has CBD, CBDA, and CBG in it. But then you have the terpenes. If, for example, there was, so similar to it's just essential oils, but a lot of plants have them. Like lavender has some of the same chemicals that a hemp plant would. I mean, they're shared between different fruits, vegetables, flowers, all this stuff. And so we can make use of that if we want to calm an animal down, or rev them up. Maybe they're an old dog and they're just dragging around the house. They might want something like limonene, that is from citrus, that has more of an awakening, rejuvenative aspect, versus linalool, which is similar to what is in lavender, which is more calming. There are things that are more physically relaxing, like myrcene, which mangoes have. So it's really exciting to just learn about the botanical chemistry of cannabis. And there's even just one product from black pepper that hemp or cannabis will have, and that's beta caryophyllene, and that is actually going to interact directly with the CB2 receptors in the endocannabinoid system and has anti-inflammatory effects. So it's like, oh, that's great. So black pepper even could do some of this. So anyway, education about what the chemistry of cannabis can offer would be of value, or if you can read up on what that company is offering, and why, or is it straight cannabidiol? I mean, that is going to impact the delivery of effects of that product. Some people have said that if you took a straight cannabidiol CBD preparation, which wouldn't smell because CBD and THC are both, you can't smell them. They don't have a scent or an odor. But if you took straight CBD, like some people advise, the problem with that is that just anecdotally, people will find that the effects wear off sooner. So it's that complexity, or as I mentioned before, the entourage effect, that is just this orchestra of different natural chemicals that each have their own properties. And as it's been said, and is probably to most of a degree true, that in nature there are balancing chemicals in plants naturally, some excitatory, some inhibitory, or whatever. And the ultimate result is that you have harmony. Sounds kind of woo-woo, but it's just there is an advantage of a whole plant extract versus isolating a chemical. And then so how do you want to deliver it? As I mentioned before too, if we went with dog biscuits that have CBD in them, for example, as we looked at, I mean, there might be no CBD in there. So where is the regulatory system? How can we have faith that what the label says is actually true? And when I sent some products to cannabis testing labs myself, you found a wide variety. Sometimes it was too much THC, sometimes it was no CBD. So edibles have problems because what is the distribution within a biscuit? How much, when you stirred it up, how much got distributed throughout? Is it even? Is there too much in one biscuit versus another? What's the shelf life, and so on? And it's been baked maybe 1 or 2 times. So there's that. It seems that the oil extract is probably the best delivery system, based on not a huge amount of research, but based on what we can tell. But that's for dogs, and cats don't like the flavor, and so that's a challenge. And as far as what people should look for, that's going to vary based on where you are, because in the US, there is no FDA, federal approved product that has cannabis in it for animals. There is one product called Epidiolex that has been approved for humans, and vets could use it off label, and that's predominantly CBD. And it's very expensive, hard to get. And do we really want to use that? Versus some of the preparations, and I just really know of the ones in the US, like there's 2 main companies that I'm aware of that have supported a fair amount of research. So to me, I would gravitate towards those companies that have stepped up and done research, and we know something about their profile, how it's going to, what kind of effects it's going to have, what do we need to watch out for, because there can, mostly the issue that we look at, even with most herbs, is a change in the liver enzymes. So they may go up. So we really don't know what the long-term effects of being on these products for months or years would be. Most of the studies only go for 12 weeks or so. So still a lot to know, but if I might say, just to end this piece up, and then you can see if I actually answered your question. But when we compare what the safety is of most cannabis products, from what I can tell, it is way safer than most of the drugs that are available. And I think we've been cultivated to just accept, okay, yeah, you might get an ulcer, you might have GI bleeding, liver changes and drug interactions and all this stuff. So we've been conditioned, I think, to be a little bit more accepting of whatever drugs have as their profile, and that's just the lay of the land. But then people get like, oh no, it's going to change liver enzymes. Well, we can't use it. Or we don't know exactly every little last piece of how it works. Oh, we can't use that. Well, there's a lot of drugs that we use in veterinary medicine that we don't know everything about, and that are far more risky than cannabis. So it's, again, the education piece is that we need to have a critical view of everything that we do: drugs, surgery, herbs, integrative medicine approaches, everything.
Okay, great. Thank you. And it makes it so complicated when we think about, it's not regulated. Like you said, they could be lying on the label. That analysis doesn't necessarily apply to this batch. So it makes it very complicated to say, okay, well, what am I actually getting in this specific product? But I think you've raised a really good point in saying that, well, there's a wide safety margin. So am I kind of correct in saying, okay, well, if there's a wide safety margin and I find a company that I like, I should use that product, see how my patients respond on it, and go from there? Because can I do much better than that unless I'm actually sending every batch out for analysis?
Yeah, well, I think we can also determine which companies are ones that we can rely on in terms of providing you that certificate of analysis that is current, that has the batch number on the paper that matches the batch number on your bottle. And so that's why, again, there are a couple companies that I'm aware of in the US that you see them doing the research, and knowing people that are involved with the company and that vouch for their practices, good manufacturing practices, good just the quality of the product and analysis and all that. And so that's really the best that we can go on, I think, for this time. And that if it's transparent and you can see what the profile is, you can see what's in there, you can see what the papers are and how they, what values they had. And, if it doesn't have the full profile of terpenes or other chemicals that you want, ultimately, if we can get more sophisticated, like in human cannabinoid medicine, that we could, if there was another product that we liked that had a different profile, but we wanted a little bit of both, conceivably, you could recommend, okay, take 2 drops of this one and, 3 drops of the other once or twice a day. And start low and go slow is just the mantra that there is, even for other botanicals. So we start a very low dose and then titrate up to clinical effects. And then, will they become a little bit tolerant of it later or whatever? Then the fact that there is a wide safety margin, again, these companies have to scrutinize not only the contents of the plant stuff, but microbes, heavy metals, other, the fungi, and just things that you don't want, dirt. There's all these kinds of things, petroleum distillates for getting the oil extract. So there's lots of things that could be bad that could be in there. So rather than going to the local gas station, not that gas stations are bad, but just, you get that company, and if you can rely on it and they are doing good work, then that's something to watch for and possibly rely on. But again, at least with the papers that are out there saying we don't know what the long-term effects are, we don't know what the actual physiologic impact is of them having higher liver enzyme values when they're on for a while. Is that a problem? What is the drug interaction capacity of a certain chemical with other things? And so, like with one of the CSU studies that has come out looking at seizure control, they didn't find clinically that the CBD preparation interacted negatively with the multiple anti-epileptic drugs that these animals were often on. So that's good, but there is a capacity in the literature shown that cannabinoids can interact with other drugs. And so that's going to change the processing. Could it make the other drugs more toxic or less effective? So that's this whole other dimension that is part of doing botanical medicine that everybody should have familiarity with. So it's different than prescribing a drug. And that's why with botanical medicine, there's so much science to know before we try it in any animal, and where might it be contraindicated. And then the other thing is cannabis even appropriate? So we have to do a good diagnosis. What are we treating? What are our goals? So just another little aside, I and a human pediatric neurologist had applied for funding. We were going to test just the effects of medical cannabis in children with intractable seizures. So, I mean, really bad congenital seizures. And as we were talking about this study, he mentioned that when he has seen kids with these unending seizures, like the first step shouldn't be which cannabis agent should we give you. The first step is, why are these seizures happening? And it could be heavy metal toxicity in some of these, or something else. So I'd say before we even jump to treatment, let's make sure that the diagnosis is solid and that we aren't committing errors of omission by doing something else that should be done. I mean, I usually try to approach things non-surgically, but what if there is a tumor that is doing something? Let's address that proactively and not delay. And then we could use cannabis in other ways.
Okay. Yeah, I really like that. Guys, for those that are joining us live, it's really great to have you. I would just like to invite you to engage with us, chat with us, share your experience. Do you use CBD oil for your patients? Where have you found it to be helpful? And if you don't, why not? And are you going to try and bring it into your practice after this conversation? It would be great to hear from you guys. So chat to us a little bit more, Narda, about what we should be aware of that can go wrong. So you've highlighted now that we need to be, a diagnosis is important. So as with everything, this is the basis of what we do. If we don't know what we're treating, we're off to a bad start. So, so what else do we need to be aware of? What can go wrong, and what should we do about it?
Yeah, good question. So, will we look for the side effects? So, probably the most common side effect would be sedation, and maybe they will adapt to that or not. So, monitoring the dose and adjusting as necessary, because for pretty much all herbs across the board, even if somebody says, oh, give such and such amount, there is likely no research supporting that dose, or if there is, there's one study. So cannabis has led the way in terms of doing these analyses so that we can get a better handle on which doses we should use. But so that's why we start low and go slow, because we don't want to just pound them with this and then have them, over sedate, or have them be nauseated, vomiting, have vomiting. For the cannabis mixtures that might have not been so honest, or have not done the due diligence for testing to make sure there's not excessive amounts of THC, like even back in when I was starting research with CSU on this, and found products that had too high of THC. So they were technically marijuana and not hemp products. But with the variability, if you saw signs of THC toxicosis in these animals, you'd know, oh, wait, there's something different going on here than should be explained by cannabidiol in the other constituents. And so staggering, just a little bit hallucinatory, things like that, then you might even switch products. And so that's what some clients will find is that one product just did not do what another product could. And I mean, that's part of just the chemistry of what's in there that can vary quite a bit, and the delivery mechanisms, et cetera. So it's just good to, again, for most herbs, once you start on them at a lower dose, check the blood profile, chemistry profile and such, within probably about 6 to 8 weeks. See where you are, and then do some more measurements in another 2 to 3 months, perhaps, and just note, are any aberrancies coming up and what's happening clinically. So I think that's kind of it. If there were other medications on board, sometimes what you'll see as a side effect is that you really could have cut back on the anti-inflammatories or even the seizure medications. But I'd say to do so in conjunction with your veterinarian. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I think there's also a component of, so you were talking about trying different products and one might do what another doesn't. Is there also quite a bit of the individual patient's, their body and their chemistry that play a role there? So one product might work for this patient while another doesn't, but it's more to do with the patient than the product?
Oh, that's a super excellent point. Yes. And while CBD, so we talked about the endocannabinoid system, and that, I mean, not to get into the weeds there, but there are two main receptors, CB1, which is more the brain and spinal cord, and CB2, which is more like the immune system and peripheral nerves. And so we know that CB2, cannabidiol, tends to engage with the CB2 more, but just the endocannabinoid system in itself is such that what it means is that we have internal chemicals that are made from arachidonic acid on our membranes and stuff. So we already have this system inside us that is responsible for how something like THC or CBD, will work. But we have the capacity to produce chemicals ourselves, and that has always been there. It should be taught in medical and veterinary school about how the neurotransmitters that we call endogenous cannabinoids, endocannabinoids, but it's just a name. They're not structurally the same as the THC and CBD. But that said, just like you could have maybe a serotonin kind of relative deficiency or just changes in other neurotransmitters, what's been coming up in the research is that you could have an endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome. So people that have maybe fibromyalgia, I think migraines, maybe even inflammatory bowel disease, I believe, just different problems that your endogenous, your internal system is not working as it should to auto-regulate and restore homeostasis and function, that when you add exogenously a cannabinoid kind of preparation, that works because you didn't have enough yourself, or maybe your enzymes that degraded your own internal chemicals were too active. And drug companies are sure looking at this. They want to find out ways to manipulate your endogenous system by inhibiting enzymes for breakdown and all that stuff. But just in that same way, we can think about animals that are failing to thrive or that have these autoimmune conditions or inflammatory conditions or whatever. So you're right that certain animals may respond to maybe the filling in effect of a cannabinoid mixture more because they need that more so, or it's the terpene profile where they can, have value in regulation just because of the complexity of those chemicals. So for sure. And that's where that next step for cannabis medicine in the veterinary field is to be able to tailor your products to your animals, not just take one off the shelf, but to actually, it's like a prescription. And wouldn't that be great? I think you have a seizure animal, you have a hyper anxious animal, or a painful animal. Those all could use somewhat different preparations instead of one size fits all.
That is so interesting. I think it's mind blowing to think. You mentioned earlier, like plants have a whole profile. They're not just made up of one thing. And yeah, it's really exciting to think about what that means if we're using them in their whole or in their parts instead of just one active ingredient or one component to create homeostasis, to help rebalance and bring back normality to the body. I think that's really really exciting. So I don't know how you guys feel about it. Let us know, chat to us, share your thoughts, your experiences. Have you been using CBD in your practice? I have played with it a little bit, I mostly use it for my own guy, for Sasha. But there have been a few patients where, you know, we've just really struggled to get the pain under control, or there have been some other things like appetite. They just stopped eating, didn't want to eat anymore. And I recommended adding that in. And yeah, we had some good results and some not so good results every now and then. But it's definitely worth trying and worth starting to use and supporting our patients with. So I think I just have one more question. CuraCore is quite new to us. Many of us aren't familiar with CuraCore. So who is CuraCore and what do you guys do?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. CuraCore is the name of the company that that I actually started teaching, like, and even though I separated from CSU in 2016 and developed this company, but I was already teaching privately for since 1998, and so a mixture of working in the university and my own courses, and so right. So now we have our own school as well, and we teach a science-based approach to integrative medicine. And how it also relates back to cannabis is that the discovery, little side tour, but the discovery of the endocannabinoid system is not only good for cannabis medicine, but we teach medical acupuncture, massage, laser therapy, botanical medicine, and integrative rehabilitation. And the endocannabinoid system and working with that and helping support it and its function in a healthful manner. I mean, that is part of what our effects with medical acupuncture do, with massage, with movement therapy. I mean, so it's not just that we need something to put in our mouths or to put on our skin to help it. It's that there are ways. I mean, you go for a run and you know, there used to be talk about the runner's high. Well, in actuality, that's probably your endocannabinoid system high. And so it all kind of interfaces. But again, that's the beauty of a scientific approach, and looking at the evidence and what supports what, because we're not about, like our saying is, no woo-woo, just science. And so we're not looking for magic or mystery or metaphysics to explain what we do. We know that with medical acupuncture, that has effects with the nervous system and the connective tissue, so the muscles, the myofascia. And so that's how we approach all the different disciplines that we teach. And so that's the vet side. And then I have a corollary for the human side. And like, I'll be seeing human patients this morning. And because we're all animals, we're all on a spectrum. But yeah, that's what CuraCore Vet does. And so several years ago, about 2018, we began teaching rehabilitation, and our approach, we call it integrative rehabilitation and physical medicine. So it includes the various integrative aspects that we already teach and physical therapy approaches, and some of the osteopathic influence from my background in physical medicine. But our orientation is more non-surgical than some of the others. So surgery, if needed, I suppose is okay, but I have a real bias against the TPLO procedure. I've written about that. But anyway, there are so many ways that we can augment body strength, neural and muscular control over joint integrity, and you know, core balance and strengthening, and also treating the body not as a vat of chemicals that you put more chemicals in to regulate it, but actually, you know, what does movement have to offer? What does touch. How can we regulate the body with that, and sophisticated, palpation and treatment. And then, of course, acupuncture, so many decades of research and thousands of studies that the mainstream likes to disavow or just ignore. And so it gives integrative medicine a bad rap, but adding the two, integrative medicine and rehab, I just can't envision working without that, because a lot of the people that learn from our acupuncture courses, they say, the acupuncture was a game changer in terms of controlling the pain that these animals were having, that the other modalities didn't fully address. But now, by regulating the endocannabinoid system and the endogenous opioid system and relaxing these myofascial strain patterns, that the animals can do better, they can recover more fully, activating endogenous stem cells, et cetera. But yeah, I mean, laser therapy, the whole thing. And so let's go for that first. Like, cruciate injury is not an emergency. So the things that aren't for sure surgical, or that we think they might be needing surgery at this point, but really, like with disc disease, so many animals don't need surgery. And we see that. We see medical acupuncture related techniques and the physical medicine and rehab, you get them going again. The spinal cord can heal. So, it's about making beneficial changes to medicine and showing how much of a wealth of substances and capacities and just interactions that the body can do for itself. And this is like the osteopathic thing, is that if we can remove encumbrances to our internal healing process and then support all that and, lengthen the body and work with the tissues, then the results can be really amazing. And I don't think that it's been given a fair shake in veterinary medicine until, more recently, but we have further to go, and more needs to be taught about the science of this instead of the woo-woo aspects. That's what we're about.
Yeah. Okay, I love it. I think you've given us quite a few things to think about and to look forward to in the coming months. I think we should have some more conversations. You've touched on a few very interesting topics there, so definitely some further exploration. To those that are watching this as a recording, it's really great to have you. Thank you. Please share any thoughts, comments, or ideas that you have, your experiences. We'd love to hear from you. If there's any other topics that you guys want us to discuss and chat about, let us know, and we'll add that into the program through the course of the year. Thank you, Narda, for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Look forward to speaking to you again.
Have a great day, guys.
Bye-bye.